Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is the next video in the additional skill RPA developer series where we are exploring the topics which as an RPA developer I can have so that I can excel in my automation journey. And the topic which we have chosen is the databases. Prior to this videos in the series, we have already seen how you can install SQL Server, which is also known as SSMS. In case you don't have the SQL Server, you can follow this playlist and the first video will guide you how to install the SQL Server. After that, we have seen the basics of databases, how you can create the table, update the statement, delete the tables, what are clauses, what are comments, what are operators. All of this we have seen by a step-by-step demo. And now we are covering something which is called constraints. So in the last video of the series, we have covered what exactly is a primary key constraint, how do you use it and why it is important. This video is going to be continuation of the same where we are going to see the next constraint which is called the foreign key constraints. Talking of the agenda, so this would be our agenda for today. We are going to have a quick recap on the constraints, what is the primary key. Then we are going to jump to foreign key constraint. We are seeing how I can use it in SQL. Then I'll see how to add a foreign key constraint and we'll explain the properties of using the foreign keys, right? And all of this we are going to do in a step-by-step demo. Okay. Let's get started by having a quick recap on what we have seen, that what exactly are constraints, right? So in SQL Server, constraints are the rules and the condition that are defined on the table that enforce a data integrity and ensure that the data meets a certain criteria. In other words, let's say I want to create a table and in that table I want to have only a specific set of data. I want to enforce some rules. I want to enforce some kind of a conditions. If you have a requirement, then we go and actually use something which is called constraints, right? This detailed thing we have already explained in the previous video, so not going into much detail. Okay, so these are the some of the common kinds of constraints which are available in SQL: primary, foreign, unique, check, default and not null, right? Primary we have already discussed in the previous video. Just a quick recap. Whenever I have a table and I want to make sure that there are no duplicate records in that table, we apply something which is called a primary key. So to give an example, let's say you have an employee table and we understand that employee ID cannot be duplicate. So in that scenario, your employee ID becomes a primary key. Also, primary key ensure that you do not have the null value and it do not have the duplicate value as well, right? How do you add a primary key? So you just create this table and as you can see, this is the syntax of adding the primary key. Whichever column you wanted to have primary, you just have to specify this keyword which says primary key and your job is done, right? So that is how easy it is to add primary key. Now whenever we are adding primary key, there are something we need to take care of. Please watch the previous video to get more insights on primary key, right? Taking this concept of primary key to the next step, today we are going to discuss about a foreign key, right? Now what exactly is a foreign key? A foreign key is a constraint that enforces referential integrity between two tables, right? As you can see, I have highlighted the term between two tables. So primary key was restricted only to a single table. But if I have to maintain this kind of integrity, I have to maintain this kind of rules and condition between two tables in a database, how I can do that? So whenever you have a requirement to enforce integrity between two tables, I use something which is called foreign key. Now, what actually I'll get benefit of using foreign key, right? It will ensure that the value in column or set of columns match the another table primary key or unique key, right? So this might sound a bit tricky, but trust me, when I show you the example, you will properly understand it, right? So just bear with me for a moment. The relationship between these two tables is known as the foreign key. By using foreign key, we actually establish relation between two tables. It can be one to one, it can be one to many, it can be many to many. Okay. To understand foreign key with an example, I have this slide where I have got two tables, which is very simple, right? So I have a table which is called employee As you can see, the employee ID is a primary key. It has the name, it has the job title, and it has the department. Okay. On the right hand side, I have a different table which is called department. So in the department, you have department ID, department name, and the location. So if I ask you guys what would be the primary key for employee, so you would always say that yes, employee ID is the primary key. So we understand that yes, this is a primary key. For department table, you have a department ID which is a primary key, right? So PK signifies the primary key, right? So you have one table, you have two table. Now a question arises, can I have an employee in my database without a department? The answer is no, right? Or the other thing, I am having an employee in my database whose department is sales, but the sales department is not available in the database. That also does not make sense, right? Whenever we talk about data integrity, that simply means that if I have an employee and he is associated to a department, that department should be a part of the database, right? Otherwise, these records would be orphan records. So this is what a foreign key does, right? Now to ensure that this thing works perfectly, what we are going to do is we are going to create these tables, and I'm going to show you how exactly this relationship is built. Okay, so let's go back to the SQL Server now and see all of this in action. Okay, so I am back into my SQL Server. I am connected to the same database, which is UiPath, which we have been working, and I have only two tables, which is product and the temporary database. Okay, so let's go here and I'll select a new query. Now what we have to do, I have just copy pasted this diagram here, right? So we wanted to have two tables. One is employee, which is this guy. One we wanted to have department. These are the two different tables which we want to create, right? So let's first create the department table, right? So I need a department ID, I need a department name, and I need a location, right? How do you create a table? You simply use a statement which is called create table, right? And that actually should be able to create the table for you, right? So I'm going to quickly copy paste a statement here. As you can see, create the department table, create table department. Department ID is the primary key, right? You remember department ID is the primary key here. So we are going to specify it as primary key. We have department name, which is varchar, and then we have something which is called location. So I can always hit a comma and I can say that we wanted to have something which is called location. That would be also a varchar, and location, let's say we wanted to have of 25 characters, right? So this is actually going to create the department table for me. Now if you see carefully here, for the department table, department ID is the primary key, which means that when I am inserting data into the department table, I cannot have duplicate departments, right? So let's try to insert some data into this department table. So I'll just write this statement here. Insert data into the department table, insert into department, department ID, department name, and we have a column which was location, right? So I wanted to add two department. The first is sales, the second is marketing, and I want to say that this location is, let's say, Pune, and this location is, let's say, Chennai. Okay, so I have got two records which I am inserting in the department table, right? So till this point we have already seen that all of this thing work perfectly, right? We insert the data into the department. Let's quickly validate what data we have, right? So I say here select star from department. I have got two department here, sales and marketing. My requirement now is that whenever I am inserting or I am creating an employee record, they should be only from sales and marketing. They should not be from finance or HR, because I don't have those department in my company, right? Now how do we do that? So first thing first, let's try to create a employee table. Okay, this is the creation of the employee table, right? Which was this one, name, title, department ID, everything, right? So when I am creating the employee table, so I created employee ID, that is the primary key, nothing new here. Employee name is a varchar, that's also fine. Now department ID, in the employee table I want to store something which is called department ID. That is also fine, right? Till this point we have already seen. But now I want to make sure that whichever department you insert in this table is already a part of your department table here. So that means that I can only have employees with department ID 1 and department ID 2. Okay. So how do I do that? So all you have to do is just you have to write this syntax, foreign key, which is a keyword. Now SQL is asking me which is the foreign key, which is the column. So you have 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. Which is the column which you want to have foreign key? I want to have the department ID as the foreign key. So I just specify here. Now it is asking me where exactly should I match this, right? So where exactly should we match this? So this department ID should be a foreign key to the department table and department ID, right? So this thing. So the department ID of employee table should be a foreign key to the primary key of the department table. So that's what we have specified here. See, foreign key, department, then we write references. So this is your table name. The table name is department, and what is the column? The column is department ID. How do I know? We just created that table, right? We created a department table and it has department ID. So now if I execute this statement, my employee table is created. Okay. Now to understand this thing, let's try to insert some records in the employee table. Okay. And then we would be able to understand. Okay. So how do we insert? We simply use an insert into employee ID, employee name, and department ID, right? So let's try to remove these 2 employees as of now. Okay. So I wanted to insert only 2 records in the employee table. Employee ID is 100, employee name is John Smith, and the department ID is 1, right? So if you see here, we already have department 1 and department 2 here, right? So if I just insert these statements, 2 rows affected, everything well. So now let's try to see what data we have in the employee table. I just go here and I say select star from employee. Execute, and you would say that employee ID 100, 200 for John and Jane with department ID is inserted, right? This is what we have seen, right? But now what is the benefit of using that foreign key, right? Let's say tomorrow I want to insert a new employee. Okay. I want to insert a new employee whose employee ID is 300 and 400. And I give them a department ID of, let's say, 5. And there I see a department ID of 6, right? Now this can be from any robot, this can be from a website, anywhere this record might have come, right? Now I cannot simply insert this record in my database. I need to make sure that my department IDs are as per my department table. So what happens if I try to execute this statement? You would notice that you are getting an error which says the insert statement conflicted with the foreign key constraint, right? So it says that you have a foreign key constraint which is foreign key underscore department, which is this, right? Now it says the conflict occurred in the database. So it will give you the proper details, right? The conflict occurred in the database, which is the UiPath, right? This is our database, UiPath database. In the UiPath database, you have a department table. And in the department table, you have a column called department ID, and the value which you are trying to insert here, 5 and 6, are not in that table. Okay. So if I just make it to 1 and let's try to insert it again, I'll again get the same error, right? But if I change it to 2 and I change it to 2, right? And I'll just change this name to Smith and I'll change this name to Doe, right? So that we understand, right? Now I am inserting 2 records here, 300, 400, and the department ID is actually part of our department table, right? We only have 2 departments. I execute, and now you would see that you are able to insert it, right? So validate, I'll go to the employee table, and you can see that 100, 200, 300, and 400. And all the departments are only from what we have in the department table. That means that you cannot insert an employee into the table with a different department which is not a part of your department table. Okay, so I hope now you understand the concept of the foreign key and why it is important. Let's come back to the presentation and see what we have got. Okay, Now to establish the relationship between the employee and the department, we have used something which is called the foreign key constraint. Okay. These are the queries which I have used in the demonstration. So create table department. We created a department table which was having a primary key. Then we created an employee table, and to specify the foreign key, we simply use this syntax, which is foreign key department ID references department, which is from the department table, and this is the ID, right? So that is how you actually go and create the foreign key constraint, and this was using a primary key as the department ID, right? And here this was the primary key. So in a table you can have primary and the foreign key constraints, right? That also you might have noticed here, right? And these are the simple insert statement. Okay. Now, whenever we talk about the foreign key, I need to have some benefits, or I need to have some properties, right? What exactly are the benefits which I get? The first one is referential integrity, which simply means that the child table foreign key column has a valid value in the parent table. To take this an example, we have tried that whenever I was trying to insert an employee with a department which was not in the department table, I was getting an error. So this prevents inconsistency of the records and the orphan records. The second thing, maintaining relationship. It maintains the relationship between the two tables, allowing the business to enforce the rule and maintain the data integrity. You might have different set of business rules, like you cannot have students without a roll number, you cannot have class teacher without a class, right? Any kind of business rule exception can be created between two tables by using the foreign keys. Cascading actions. This simply means that you can define actions that automatically occur when a reference record in the parent table is updated or deleted, which simply means that today, if I have to change something in the parent table, which is the department, that automatically will cascade to the child table as well, right? Let's see that in action. Back into my SQL server to understand the cascading operations, I have two tables here. One is the employee and one is the department. In the department, I have two departments, one is sales and other is marketing, right? Now, if I simply go to the department table and I try to update, right? I simply say update the department, and I would say that set the department ID is equal to 1000, where the department ID was 1. Okay. Now what I am telling the SQL server is that wherever you have the department ID as 1, you update it to 1000. But we already have data in the employee table where the department ID is like this. Now what happens if I execute this statement? So if you see here, now here, as soon as I execute this statement, I am getting an error which simply says that you have an employee table and it has a foreign key relationship with my department. So that means that you cannot simply go and update this data like this. What will happen to this record, right? So this kind of restrict you from having that cascading operations. If you do not have the foreign key constraint, it would have directly updated, right? But this restrict you to do that. Now let's say I want to have this, right? So what is the alternative? The alternative for me is to insert first that record into the department ID and then update this one, then it would work, right? So let's try to see that in action, right? So we wanted to have update this as 1000, but it has a record here, right? Now if I want to simply update it, first I need to delete this record here, or I need to insert a new record. But my objective is I wanted to update this department ID here as 1000, right, in the department. So till the time you have a record here, you won't be able to update this table. But if I simply go and delete this record, okay, so I'll go to the employee table, I'll say delete from employee, okay, and I would say that where department ID is equal to 1. So I'll delete this record. Okay, now if I see here, I do not have any employee with department ID 1. Now if I go here and I update the department table with this query that set this department ID to 1000 and I execute, it is successful, right? Now I can always insert employees, right? So that means that this kind of restrict you from having inconsistent data, and this is what it is called a cascading operation, right? The same thing happens if, let's say, tomorrow you decide to delete the department. Okay, so let's say I have this department which is 2 here, and I have got 3 employees in that department. Let's try to delete this department from the table. So I say that delete from department table, and I say that where department ID is equal to 2. Okay, so I'm telling it to delete this department. I'm doing nothing in the employee table. So I try to delete this department here, and it says that I cannot delete this department because in your employee table you have got employees with that department. But if you try to delete this 1000, let's see here, if I go here and I say that delete this record 1000, I do not have any employee with the 1000 record here, execute, that is deleted, right? So this kind of cascading operation, this kind of functionality in terms of referential integrity is provided with the help of foreign keys. Coming back to the presentation, I hope now you understand what exactly is cascading actions now. The fourth item here is the data integrity, right? By enforcing the referential integrity, foreign key helps you to maintain the integrity of data, right? We have already seen that we cannot create orphan records, and we ensure that only valid values are stored in the foreign key. The fifth element, or I would say property, is that it helps you to create the index. Foreign key are often indexed and improve the query performance. If you have a foreign key which is available on your table, it will automatically generate index, and indexing will allow you to retrieve the results faster whenever you do a select or whenever you perform some kind of join operations. So these are the properties which we need to understand whenever we are working with foreign key constraints. Okay, let's move forward. Now, during the presentation, I talked about one-to-many relationship. Now, to take this as an example, we had a department table and we had an employee table. Now, one department can have multiple employees. I see that I have a sales department and it has 5 employees. I have an HR department, it has 10 employees. Now, with the help of foreign key, we are also managing the one-to-many relationship, which means that now I am free to retrieve the data based on an employee table, based on the department table. I can always write an query and I can always see that how many employees I have got in the sales department, how many employees I have got in the HR department. So the one-to-many relationship allows you to query, retrieve the information. Not only this, you can perform the aggregations also. We have explained aggregation in the previous videos. We can perform operations, updates, delete. All of that is possible with the help of one-to-many relationships. Just to give an example, today I can retrieve all the employees who are working in a sales department by just filtering out the department ID column in the employee table, right? So kind of a one-to-many relationship. So all this is possible with the help of something which is called foreign key constraint. Okay, so I hope this concept is also clear, and that completes the foreign key. Let's quickly summarize. So today we have seen that we have something which is called foreign key constraint that allows us to have referential integrity between two tables, right? This relationship define the link between the two tables. The foreign key allows you to have records which can have one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many relationship, right? And whenever you have a foreign key, it makes sure that you do not have orphan records. It is easy to retrieve the data. You have the cascading updates and deletes as well, right? So this is all we have covered, and I hope now you have got a clear understanding of the foreign key. Okay, so that is all for this video. I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this video insightful and now you got a clear understanding of what exactly is a foreign key constraint. If you have any more questions, any more doubts, feel free to drop me a comment or you can always drop me an email as well. I'll appreciate your feedback on the video and see you in the next video where we are going to discuss about the next constraint. Till that time, thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and happy automation.